treated. All right, like I mentioned earlier on, we are being joined by an historian, a well-renowned historian in Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, who is based in South Africa as a lecturer. Doc, welcome and good evening to you once again to the analysis program.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Innocent. I assume I'm talking to Innocent because I can't see.
Yes, please. You are very much correct.
Thank you so much, Innocent. Thank you for having me and good evening to the viewers.
Thank you so much. You are back on our program this evening as well, prompted by your latest article you've written around the delimitation and or why Bill 7 must fall. What's the issue here around the delimitation?
Well, if you listen to the president, for example, and his supporters, they present bills, rather delimitation, as something that is in the public interest. So what I was trying to demonstrate in that article is that, in fact, like most of the provision that you just read, that the technical committee was appointed to use as part of their consultation with the people, delimitation itself, the proposal that there should be some new constituencies, is self-serving. You see, the first thing that the president or the government should have done, if they mean well in terms of the delimitation, is to release the delimitation report, because the report that they are using was actually conducted by the PF, I think somewhere around 2019. So there's nothing wrong in releasing that report to the people. That's before the committee goes to conduct its work, so that the people know what constituencies, based on that delimitation report, have been proposed or earmarked for division. You can't say the people should comment on delimitation when they don't have access to the report. So I don't understand why, for example, the committee was allowed to go and do its work when that report itself remains secret. Now, that leads me to the question of why the president in particular is very, very keen to proceed with this delimitation exercise. And in that write-up, I suggest 3 explanations in relation to why the exercise of creating new constituencies is very important to him. The first is that he's using the creation of new constituencies to resolve differences in his party, because there are a number of MPs that are very, that face a lot of strong competition from challengers in their constituencies. The president himself, I think, not long ago, made a claim that even though he himself is not worried about the election, he's worried that most of his MPs won't be returned. That speaks to the potential and popularity of these MPs based on what the source of his information was. Now, you have several constituencies like Choma Centro, Monze Centro, Kafue, Kembe, Magoye, Chikankata, where you have a tug of war between the serving MPs, some of them very long serving MPs, and the new entrant and the new challengers. The danger is that these constituencies are in the UPND strongholds. And in Southern Province, for example, if a candidate, a challenger is strong and is not adopted, they can stand and win as an independent. So you risk having a situation where you field an incumbent who is unpopular, and then the independent wins. So to avoid that kind of scenario, the delimitation exercise is happening, is being pushed, so that constituencies where there are those kind of scenarios are divided to satisfy both the challenger and the serving MP. So if Jackie Mwim, for example, rather than him stepping down, you would say, let him, we are going to cut this Moses into 2 constituencies. But the point I was making there is that you can't use party differences to change the national constitution. It's wrong. And I mentioned a couple of names in terms of where this is happening. Like in Kembe, if you listen to the Minister of Justice herself, she constantly makes reference to this idea that Kembe is too big. And that provides this kind of undercurrent where they want to use that to cut the constitution, rather the constituency into two parts, because Chipo Mwanawasa is already doing some work there in preparation for launching her campaign. You have the same scenario in several other constituencies that I pointed out. So that was one explanation I was showing, that the president is trying to avoid the weakening or implosion of the ruling party by creating additional constituencies where these kind of contestants can be satiated to say you can both stand in these new constituencies that we have created. Now, there's nothing wrong with the ruling party having this kind of internal competition. What is wrong is basing a constitutional amendment, a delimitation exercise on the basis of that, of those differences now to force us as a country to say we should engage in this exercise. So that was one. The second reason why they are so keen to push the thing is that they want to increase their control in the National Assembly. You have to understand, for example, if you use Bill 7 as the baseline, so they want to create 55 constituencies. Where are those 55 constituencies located? If they are still using the PF report, the delimitation that was generated by the PF, most of those constituencies are actually in UPND strongholds. They're in Northwestern Province, they're in Southern Province, they're in Western Province, for example, and parts of Central. There are a few, of course, in Lusaka and Northern and the Eastern. And what the president and the ruling party are trying to do is to use that report to actually build a majority in parliament. Because if you are going to divide, say, Iteji, in fact, in the report, in the write-up I wrote earlier, I said Iteji was in the Central Province because the parliamentary website where I got the information about this constituency location shows that Iteji is in Central Province. It's actually in Southern Province. If you're going to divide Iteji, Monze, Chuma Centro, Magoe, Chikankata, Mlovezi, Senanga, for example, Chongwe, you are going to have more constituencies in the ruling party stronghold. So what that does is a scenario where the ruling party is going to have a clear majority, because these are safer zones, or these are safer seats where the ruling party is likely to win if these constituencies are created as new constituencies. So I was saying that he's trying to build a two-thirds majority, clear majority, that he can then use to control parliament after the 2026 election. And then the last point I was discussing was that it's a staged thing, this thing, what the president is doing. The first thing is to get the MP to support this Bill 7 thing, or whatever modified version will come out of it. After the election, assuming he manages to steal the election, because I don't believe the president, as things currently stand, can win a free and fair election. But assuming he managed to steal the election, the plan then is to remove presidential term limits altogether. Now, there is already a justification for that, because if you look at Bill 7, one of the proposals in Bill 7 was that we should remove term limits for, I think, his mayors and the council chairperson.
Yes.
Now, there's a problem with that at two levels. The first is that there are 5 elective positions in Zambia today. You have the councillor, you have the council chairperson, you have the member of parliament, you have the president, as well as the what's the fifth one? Innocent, you can help me. So councillor, council chairperson, member of parliament, president, and I've forgotten the other one. But the key point is that out of those 5 positions, 3 have term limits on them. It is 2 that don't have term limits. So if there's an anomaly there, you have to address is making sure that those 2 offices, elective offices, public offices that don't have term limits should have term limits, so that they are consistent with the other 3 positions. What is the president proposing? He is saying, no, we should remove term limits on those 2. And he was telling mayors in Livingston at that meeting of theirs to say, you should support the removal of term limits, because if you are a good leader, you should not be removed. It's the people who should decide. That thinking is very dangerous, because it means once you have removed the term limits on those two, there will only be one position that will remain without term limits. That is the president. That is the president, presidential position. So after the election, then they will start the campaign to say it's discriminatory that we only have term limits on this position, when the other four positions, elected positions, don't have term limits. You can see then how the man can sustain himself in power in subsequent years. And the other thing, of course, is that the idea of representative democracy rests on the assumption that the society is not short of leaders. No matter how good you are, you should leave after 5-year terms, because you are not the only one who can save the country. And that's why the framers of our constitution put up that those two provisions in the constitution to say save 2 5-year terms and go. That's why when Chiluba tried to change the constitution, the people protested. That's why when even Edgar Lungu tried to stand in 2021, I was one of the I sued Lungu, because I believed that it was wrong for him to go to stand for another term, because according to the constitution that we had before, he had served those 2 terms. And when he did it, when the Constitutional Court made that dubious ruling in 2021, the voters rejected him. Now, it's those 3 positions that I was highlighting to show the people and the MPs that, listen, the Constitution is very, very important to all of us. We shouldn't change it to satisfy the interests of a ruling party or an individual. We should build consensus and make sure that when we change the Constitution, it is in the interest of the public, not in the interest of a political party. The same way we rejected the PF and Edgar Lungu's attempts to change the Constitution and implement some of the proposals that the UPND are now proposing. In the same way, we should unite and stop the UPND, because it's in our collective interest to make sure that we protect the Constitution from executive-driven manipulation to amend it.
Interesting. Let me ask you a few questions before we let you go, Doc. I'm looking at just a summary of your article and some of the constituencies which you have, of course, highlighted, which are allegedly earmarked for delimitation. You've brought in, for example, Monze, as you've mentioned, Monze, there's Choma Central, Magoye, Mapatizia, Katombora, and Namwala in Southern Province. There's also Iteziteji, Kembe, Nangoma in Central Province. Also Kafue, there's is it Kanyama? Yeah, Kanyama constituency. There is also Shilanga. There's Chongwe, which is in Lusaka Province. We've also brought in Mufumbwe, Mwinlunga, Zambezi East, Kasempa in Northwestern Province, and the Senanga, Mlowezi in Western Province, among several others. Now, when you look at this summary in brief, you realize that, first of all, you, in particular, one would say you were quite a bit selective in the manner you were analyzing these issues, because you only concentrated in Southern Province, Northwestern Province, part of Lusaka, as well as Central Province. Again, that's number one question. Why were you selective in analyzing these constituencies? The follow-up question would be, where did you get this information? Because the delimitation report has not been unveiled by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, as you have mentioned earlier on. So, on the other hand, you are telling us, or you are complaining that ECZ has not unveiled the delimitation report. So, where did you get this information?
Thank you. Let me start with your initial question about, the idea of selectivity.
Yeah.
I discussed the other constituencies in Lusaka, for example. Kanyama is here marked for delimitation. They want to call it Makeni East and Makeni West as its new name.
Yeah.
But the thinking there is that that constituency is populated with Lodzi and Tonga, so they can retain that seat very easily because of that history. And it has the history of what is in Lusaka, Kafue is that also earmarked for the limitation. Whether they actually go ahead and limit it, is another matter. There's a reason why they are reluctant to release the report. And that's why I started our conversation by saying, I challenge the government to release the report. There's no need to hide it from the people because it's in their interest. Why is it okay for each of his friend to start State House and glare at the report, but wrong for the people to have access to it and make up their own mind and say, we support that, Chavuma or Katombora should be divided. There's nothing wrong with that, unless they are trying to doctor the report. Okay, so that they can come back and say, no, we are using the report that we found when we came into office that was done by the PF. So the PF could come and say, no, but that's not what the report. So the correct thing for the government to do if they wish to dispel some of these things about selectivity is to publish a report so that people can see which constituencies are earmarked for delimitation, and then they can compare. Say, okay, Lusaka has 3 million people, for example. Why is it that Lusaka, with 3 million people, has 13 constituencies, but Western Province, with a third of the population of Lusaka, has 19 constituencies, for example? If you look at the constitution, it stipulates that population density is a key driver in determining the constituencies to be delimited. And then in that sense, then, places like Copperbelt, Lusaka, and Eastern Province should have more new constituencies because there are a number of them. If you think about Mandevu, you think about Matero, you think about Munari, there are so many constituencies in Lusaka that have a lot of people where you can say they should actually receive a larger share of the delimitation. But the ones that are earmarked for delimitation, which might explain why they are hiding the report, are constituencies in UPND stronghold. Those are the ones that they are very keen to proceed and delimit it. Because if you are going to say we are going to delimitate 55 constituencies, it means you know those constituencies already. What is wrong with telling the people to say, here is the list of the constituencies that we are planning to delimitate? That's what transparency demands. Now, I saw the report. You see, that report is hidden there by the Electoral Commission of Zambia and at State House. I don't understand why the UPND is so secretive even about things where they should be more transparent. I can understand Ichilema's failure to release his asset declaration because it will be very clear in terms of the interest, the business interest that he has in the economy. But when it comes to the report, you even have a whole committee formed to go and collect views and say, can you make your views known about the delimitation? How do I make my views known when I don't know the 55 constituencies you want to be delimited? I shouldn't have to rely on government insiders to get access to these documents. I'm a citizen. I should be given the benefit of doubt that I can read and make up my own judgment. So when I see people, for example, say, where did you see this report? Can you publish it? You're making a demand from the wrong person. The demand should be directed to the government to say, can you release this report? Because there's nothing classified about it. There's nothing from which the public should be protected from this report. So let it publish it so that people can see. But what are they doing? They are holding on to it. They want to go proceed with this Bill 7 thing. And then after they are finished with their manipulation, then they can throw the report in public because it will be nothing the public can do at that time. Innocent. This is wrong, and that's what I was trying to highlight to the government to say, can you be more transparent? Because as it stands now, given the focus of the constituency they wish to delimit it, it's like they are just trying to focus on those constituencies in their strongholds. And the president himself didn't help matters because at the last press conference he held, I think it was Tuesday or so last week, he made a bold declaration that there was discrimination in the previous delimitation exercises. The last delimitation was done in 2019. There was one in the early 2010. There was one in 2005 as well. Constituencies have not been changed since I think since 2016. In fact, if you go back into history, you go back to 1964, Zambia had 75 seats in parliament at the time. 65 were direct elected seats, and then 10 were nominated by the president. That number rose to about 75 in 1967, and then to 105 in 1973. In 1990, when we reverted to multi-party democracy in 1991, the number of parliamentary seats, constituencies, was increased to 150, and it remained at that level until 2016,
right,
when 6 more were added. Now, if you look at the concentration of constituencies, there are actually more constituencies in the same region that the president claims were discriminated. Even when you go back to 2016 and say, okay, which constituencies, which are these 6 constituencies that were delimited, for example, in 2016? It tells you that the previous presidents that the president is saying were discriminating against the provinces where he comes from was not true, because if you look at them and say, okay, what's the location of these provinces? I can tell you that there was one of them was Lufuvu in Ngawe district in Central Province. Now, Central Province, as we know, is predominantly a UPN stronghold, where they vote for the ruling party. The second one was Sinda in Eastern Province, in Sinda district, because that they created it by splitting the former Kapoche constituency. And then the third one was Chembe in Ruapula. Then you had Churundu. This is a UPN stronghold. Then you had Nkeyema in Western Province, I think in Nkeyema district. You then had Sioma, again in Western Province, which was created after splitting the former Sinjembera, I think Sinjembera constituency. Now, if you look even at that, the last constituency that were created, you can't say that's discrimination against the region where the president comes from.
Right.
So what the president was trying to do essentially was to use this argument of size to say, no, the size and the geographical distribution of constituencies was discriminatory. We don't change constituencies. We don't get new constituencies on the basis of the size.
Right.
You can have a big constituency, but with 2 people, Innocent and Sishuwa, living there. Why should we have 2 more constituencies just because the size is big? It's not about the size. Otherwise, you might as well demand that Zambia is too big to be run by one president. We might as well have 10 presidents so that we can have a president for each province. The law says you should use population density. The geographical distribution and the size are immaterial. And it's important, this point I'm making, Innocent, to understand that to remove all these suspicions, it's very, very simple. Publish the report so that the citizens can see for themselves which constituencies are earmarked for delimitation.
Right.
I do know that they are planning to bring back Bill 7 to Parliament this coming week, unless they extend Parliament, because Parliament should go on recess on the 5th. Unless they extend it, they want to bring it there, and then the president is going to meet those people who are supporting Bill 10, I think Bill 7 on Monday. You will hear a lot of noise after that meeting about how wonderful this whole thing is. It shouldn't be like that, where you start dividing people between us and them. We should build consensus and say, if this is in the best interest of everyone, of every citizen, can we build consensus? And there's no need to rush this thing. Can we try to make sure that we wait until the election in an environment which is not polarized,
right,
and go to the people and say, if you are going to appoint a committee, the committee should not be told. You can only ask the people questions around these 13 or so many proposals. Who made those proposals? Where did they come from? They didn't come from the people in a transparent manner. They came from the UPN, because we don't know where they came from. What should have happened is you appoint a committee, and then you let that committee go to the people and ask them what they need, what they want to be changed in the Constitution.
Right.
The committee can also consult previous reports from the Constitutional Review Commission of before. It's on the basis of that consultation that is open, and based on the previous report, and then they can generate a bill and say, here's what we have found. In fact, that's what the Constitutional Court judgment indirectly suggested, because they said, go to the people, use an independent body to make wide consultation. What do they see? We saw a rushed process. Where are we rushing to? And that's why I'm saying this. If the president, if he was very sincere, they would not have just released the report. They would have gone back to say, okay, we are going to withdraw Bill 7 from Parliament. And then you listen to the people and say, what do you want us to do? Even that meeting that he had with the Oasis Forum, I mentioned in the
that was my last question actually to you. That was my last question to you as we wind up in the interest of time. The president has cautioned. He has also advised that look, we cannot go on the street to protest. We can easily dialogue and agree or disagree. What is your take on that as we go?
The people, you see, the Constitution provides fundamental liberties. One of them is the right to peaceful assembly. That means people can protest, so protesters in Choma in support of Bill 7. That's okay. That's how it should happen. If people want to protest to State House in support of the president, they should be allowed to do so. It's their liberty. I don't have to like what they are doing. But it's their right. And that if other people like the Oasis Forum want to protest to State House to go and convey a grievance, the president doesn't have to like protesting. The role of the government, particularly the police service, is to facilitate those protests, those in favor and those against it. But what did we see? We saw Minister of Home Affairs Jack. We saw the president himself saying, protesting can scare investors. No. Our fundamental rights in the Constitution are more important to us than those investors. For example, it doesn't mean that if the president doesn't support the right to protest, then nothing should happen. Even that meeting that they had at State House, you have to understand it from the perspective of what the objectives of what they each sought to gain out of it. The president sought to use that meeting to derail the protest that the Oasis Forum was organizing, because they could see that how many people were saying they're going to attend it, and they're very fearful, of this kind of gatherings. So what does he do? He threw a carrot and says, let's dialogue. You don't say with dialogue at the 11th hour. You should have dialogue right at the beginning, withdrawn everything and say, can we now start afresh and talk to each other like citizens? That's not what we saw. So for him, the initial idea was first to derail the protest. The second objective was to make sure that he could try to persuade the Oasis Forum into the point of view. The president has made up his mind to say that they are going to proceed with. And the Oasis Forum went there, I think, in my view, so that they are not seen as antagonistic to simply say, we are going ahead with our protests. Because what happens if those protestants are, they are going to be blamed and say, you should have listened, you should have come for us to talk. And so it was commendable that they went there to talk. But what I can say confidently, having spoken to both government representatives who attended the meeting, as well as the Oasis Forum, that there's a deadlock between these two. They won't agree. The Oasis Forum remains adamant that this thing should be restarted, afresh, not rushed, preferably after the 2026 election. The president is adamant that his position is correct. This thing should proceed, and they're not going to withdraw the bill. Even when he's talking like this, there's a judgment of the Constitutional Court that if you read, you could actually see that it's wrong not to withdraw that bill from Parliament, because legally it doesn't exist. You may not like the judgment, but you have to comply with it. You can't simply ignore the judgment just because I don't like it. So there's a deadlock there in those two with those two groups. I don't know what will happen next, but the tension that is being generated by this subject is not necessary, because see, if we are writing our constitution, we should come together and say, can we agree? No, it's not a life and death matter where we say the constitution has to be amended before 2026. Or else what happens? Who is going to die if the constitution is amended? Nobody. We should be able to come together as citizens, especially on crucial subjects like constitution making. Put the politics aside and say, can we talk as adults and make sure that we agree on how to proceed? The moment you start pulling each other the way you are creating tension in the country, and that's not necessary.
All right. Thank you so much, Doc. We appreciate you once more. We hope to engage you in the near future.
Thank you so much for having me. You're most welcome at any time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. All right. So I've been speaking to Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, of course, a renowned historian, speaking to us around the delimitation article he just issued today. And we called him just to get much clarity to that as the person with all the information. And we are the media to ensure that we accommodate all the voices and those that are maybe alleging on a particular matter. It is our duty to ensure that we call them and ask them questions to clarify, as Dr. Sishuwa has just done. It is up to you now, the viewers out there, to make your own conclusion based on that or those allegations. Let's move on, gentlemen. PK, we have to move. Comrade Sishuwa, we have to move. Time is not